the turn of the century, I had my only child, my infant Julia, um, who had had a normal babyhood up until then, a little bit of colic, not anything unusual. But right around the turn of the millennium, she started developing strange symptoms. She was mostly irritable and crying all the time. And it seemed like she was in pain, but we couldn't figure out what. I took her to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician also examined her and said, there's nothing really that we can tell. She might have an ear infection, have some amoxicillin. Let's see if that helps. But her fontanelle, her soft spot, is raised. And that's something that I don't know if it's normal for her or not, but why don't you come back in about a week and we'll measure it again and see if there's any change. That night, she started vomiting. And the following morning, she started vomiting. She couldn't keep anything down. And so I called him in the morning and I said, look, you give me this amoxicillin, but it's not going to help her if she can't keep it in her system. I had no idea. I had no idea what the possibilities were other than she had the flu. And I was really surprised when he said to me, you need to take her to Children's Hospital and go straight to radiology. Don't stop at ER, just go straight. And so we did. And it wasn't but 15 minutes of being there and having her in a CT scan before the radiologist came out. And what he said was, your daughter's brain is full of tumors. And one of them is so large that it's life-threatening and needs to come out today. And so she had her first brain surgery. We found out that these were cavernous malformations. It wasn't cancer, it was vascular abnormalities. She was hemorrhaging from one of them, and it was the size of, oh geez, almost larger than a golf ball, almost the size of a tennis ball in her little baby brain. And that was really the start of what turned out to be a lifetime of dealing with this illness. So fast forward about 3 years, and at that point, she had already been through 3 brain surgeries for 3 hemorrhaging lesions. And I had to stop working. I was a clinical psychologist, but there's no way I could have taken care of my patients and taken care of her with all of this medical involvement. So I was home, and I had some neuropsych training. Her dad was a physician, a psychiatrist. And I started reaching out to see if I could find other families. We didn't know anybody who had this illness. There was no other adult, child, anybody. And so using the National Organization of Rare Diseases, we found 2 or 3 other people who had the illness and started communicating with them and discovered that they were in the same situation. They hadn't known anyone, and that they had even less information about the disease than we had, because we had at least some medical background to be able to understand the literature. So that led to the idea of, all right, let's see what's out there. Let's see what patient organizations there are that might be able to facilitate this for us. And there was no them, there was no organization. And so I didn't want my kid growing up never knowing someone else with the illness, never knowing someone else at her age with the illness. And so I contacted the editor of the textbook, the only textbook on cavernous malformations, and wrote him that one morning and said, I want to start a patient organization because certainly one is needed. What do you think we should do? And he wrote me back that afternoon, neurosurgeon, wrote me back that afternoon, Islamawad, and he said, I think you should do this and this and this, and I would be happy to be your scientific advisor because this is very much needed. And so we went off from there, set up a website, and what really struck me, was how quickly people found it. The website was up. We had a community forum, which was a bulletin board style of talking to each other, because there was no Facebook in 2002 when we did this. And folks started flooding in, and we had 100, 200, 300 by the end of 3 months internationally. One of the pivotal moments for me was when a father in Jakarta, Indonesia, emailed me and said, I have two daughters who are in the hospital at the same time. Both of them are hemorrhaging, and I don't know what to do. And so I couldn't help him directly. Obviously, I don't, yes, I moved from being a mom in Virginia to being the world's lay expert in cavernous malformation as a result of just putting up a website one day. That was at least how I was perceived. But what I could do is get his daughter's MRIs to Islamabad so that they could get at least a second look. Some other expert eyes could look at them and give him some guidance. And that's when I knew we were really needed and already making an impact 3 months in. And so that's how I got involved. I think then that just sort of feeds into continuing to make a difference and how important that is, and bringing patients together and getting information out there, and then moving on to get researchers together and collaborating and talking to each other and forming what we have now is a very cohesive research community. And so the more important question than how I became involved is, why do I stay? And it's been 20 years since I started this organization. 20 long years, but it seems like the blink of an eye. And when I see what a difference there is in the world as a result, not of my work, but of the work of everyone who's been involved with what is now the Alliance to Cure Cavernous Malformations as of just a couple of weeks ago, I am always inspired and hopeful. We went from having nothing, no patient information, no way to find a medical expert, no researchers that were really involved in talking to each other, to now being in our first clinical drug trials, to having centers of excellence around the country, to having 21 other patient organizations around the world. If you have this illness, you never have to feel alone. If you do, that's on you. You can find people online any time of night or day, and they will hear you and support you and listen to you. And it is growing. And I completely believe that we will have better treatments really, really soon, within the next few years, and potentially a cure sometime in the not too distant future. So that's my story.